Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali. My guest today is Dr. Shoyombo Ayoola, who is a geneticist, that is somebody who researches on genes. And he's been doing it for quite some years. He has a PhD, he lectures in a university, he's done postdoctoral research in Australia and all of that. And he's going to tell us a bit more about the dairy situation in Nigeria. That is why we have such poor numbers in terms of the milk we get from our cows. Welcome to the program, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
When we met at the celebration of the World Milk Day, you made a presentation where you were reeling out a lot of data, a lot of figures about the situation and comparative to Nigeria, how Nigeria stands in the continent and in the whole world. And it doesn't look very good. If I recall correctly, you say we have to be importing about $1 billion worth of dairy products, that is milk, cheese, butter, and all those related products every year, which is like taking our jobs abroad. What do you have to say to, give further details for our viewers?
Yes, thank you so much, moderator. I would want to first start by saying that, of course, dairy and dairy products is a very essential component of our nutrition. And then if we take it from the world perspective, so many countries spend so much on dairy and dairy products. For example, if you look at Australia as a country, they do a lot of dairy and dairy products. However, they are not still the highest producer. If you again look at the world dairy figures, in 2019, about $720 billion was actually expended on dairy and dairy products. Now, coming to Africa.
But before we come to Africa, can we pause a little on Australia? Am I correct in the assumption that in Australia they have more cows than people?
Yes. If you want to look at Australia as a country, Australia has a population of about 26 million, and they have about 28 million heads of cattle, which means they have more heads of cattle than even humans. Unlike Nigeria, we have about 200, from the last statistics, about 200 human
people
population, and we have just about 20.7 million heads of cattle.
And which a lot of people seem to say are not doing very well. They are not producing a lot of milk. Is that your understanding as well?
Thank you so much. Well, for me, if you say our animals are not doing very well, that may not be correct. For me, I would never stand in the place of the people that would say our animals are of poor genetic quality. No. If you tell me that our animals are not dairy breeds, I would agree with you. Because if you bring the exotic animals that are into dairy to Nigeria and you subject them to our very harsh conditions that animals pass through here, those animals will not survive. But if you take our animals here and take them abroad and give them the kind of treatments those exotic breeds receive, our animals will do better. So if you tell me that our
kind of milk.
So if you tell me that we don't have dairy breeds, I agree with you, but not that our animals are not doing well.
So given the circumstance in which they operate, that is our animals that are driven over hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers. Trekking to and fro every year in search of food, in search of water, and what have you.
See, exactly. So if you want to talk about dairy and dairy products, well, for the year 2019-2020, Nigeria expends about 520 billion naira on importation of dairy. And that's a whole lot. That's a huge amount.
And we seem to have a growing appetite for yogurt, because I remember in the last 20 years or so, there isn't as much interest in yogurt as there is now, that almost on every street in cities, there are places where they are selling
urbanization increases, as knowledge increases, as people begin to understand things about their health, well, their tastes will also begin to change. So, of course, it is not surprising that our appetite for yogurt and dairy products is increasing. However, if we are using up to about 520 billion naira on a yearly basis for importation of dairy and dairy products, I think it's something we need to look inwards and see how we can actually change the narrative such that we invest more in our animals, upgrade our animals such that we reduce the quantity that is actually pushed into this importation.
How do we then upgrade our animals if that is the direction we want to consider?
Basically, if we have to upgrade our animals, a lot of people have to come into play. For example, I was speaking with some of the key players of dairy production in Nigeria some few days back, and they told me that the promise they made, or the agreement they had with the government of the country was not actually fulfilled on the part of the government. So, again, the government must play their part in terms of whatever agreement they must have. Now, on the part of the researchers, we must be up and doing. If you recall, 90 to 95% of the heads of cattle in this country is actually in the hands of the pastoralists. These animals, like we said, they are not actually the dairy producing animals. They are not the dairy animals. So how do we go about making them? Is basically through upgrading. If you look at some big dairy companies in Nigeria, all we have seen them do over the years is to import these exotic breeds into Nigeria, and they begin to battle and struggle with this animal because they want to give them conditions and situations that look like where they are coming from. And I've always told them that that will not work.
Because you will need a lot of ACs.
You need a lot of microclimates.
Yeah, exactly.
You need a lot of micro conditions to make these things work. And it's going to increase your production cost. So I would always advocate that you try as much as possible to do upgrading of our animal by crossing. If you cross the first filial generation, and you do a second filial, and you do a back cross, and you do a second filial generation, and then you do a back crossing again, up to the third filial generation, you'll be getting animals that will be fully adapted to our condition, and we're producing close to these exotic breeds.
Can you simplify that? Do you mean if you take like a local breed of cow and have an exotic, maybe male, female, and then or you get the semen and do artificial insemination? How do you do this crossing in very
What I'm trying to say is that basically there are different types of assisted reproductive technologies that can be employed in upgrading these our animals.
Right.
One of them, and which is the lowest of them all, is the artificial insemination. What we need to do in this particular situation is to bring in either the semen or the embryos of these exotic breeds that are known to be producing milk properly, and then put these semen or embryos into our local breeds, put them into our cows. Because our cows will carry the pregnancy here in Nigeria and then produce this offspring also here in Nigeria. This offspring will grow in our climatic condition.
So it will acclimatize.
And then acclimatize easily. At the time these offsprings are becoming matured, we can do a back cross. Back crossing simply means putting that exotic semen again into that our own animal that has been produced here.
Right.
Are we together?
Yes.
If we do this the second time, we would have successfully reduced the genetic quality of our indigenous breed and increase the genetic quality of the exotic breed, but then here in Nigeria, and that animal would have also acclimatized better. If we do that the third time, you'll be getting a breed that is close to the genetic quality of the exotic, but producing milk just like or very close to the exotic breed.
Where did we get it wrong? Because this thing that you are saying has been done since the 60s and somehow it's disappeared. What happened?
Yes, I personally was not born as at that time, but of course there are books and there are literatures for us that we have read that actually gave us an insight into what happened. Some of the things that happened then was incompatibility of breeds. There are breeds that were brought in that were not compatible with our exotic breeds, with our local breeds. That is one of them. Right. Some of the breeds were larger animals, in which when you put their semen, their embryos into our locals, they became too big for our locals to give birth to them or to calve without any. So they were having a lot of challenges, a condition known as dystocia, difficulty in calving. But of course, we have also understood that there are other smaller breeds that can be used and that are compatible with our. And that is exactly what we should be doing, rather than just believing that we need to bring in the exotic breeds and begin to keep them under
a condition similar to the one that they come from.
It will not work that way. A lot of diseases, a lot of challenges will come, which you will not be able to, and that will eventually raise your production cost, and then we are still on the same spot.
But why is it that the companies, the big milk companies that are operating in Nigeria, they don't seem to be that serious with the matter? Because they should know some of the things that you are raising, and that is why all we get is powdered milk, which is like from their other markets, and then brought into Nigeria. Of course, it's cheaper for the ordinary person that wants some milk. But at the end of the day, maybe it may not be nutritionally
The truth
sound.
about the matter is that nobody will develop our country for us. The bigger companies, dairy companies you're talking about, will not develop our country for us. And as a matter of fact, to be very sincere with you, they don't even want our dairy sector to be developed. Because if our dairy sector becomes developed, they will not get the market anymore.
But they are in business. They can
that
still buy the locally produced milk and do whatever they want to do.
If our dairy products, if we stop importation, they are no longer going to be in business. They will definitely not be in business. So they don't even want our local dairy sector to develop. All they are paying is just lip service. I've always told them, each time I have conversation with them, and I'm sure you were there the last time we met, I was telling them, stop giving us money for seminar. If you really and truly want to help the country, build artificial insemination centers for us. Bring in improved semen and put in our local breeds. Train our youths on this hands-on. And then we'll be very happy that you are willing and ready to help our dairy sector.
But why should the load be, or the responsibility be, on private companies rather than the Nigerian government and Nigerians themselves?
Thank you so much. Like I have said, the challenge and the problem is multifaceted. And of course, everyone player in the sector has his role to play. I told you about the government. The government must be up and doing as far as this dairy sector. We, the researchers, we, the academia, must also be up and doing. We must also have our own role. So, of course, like I said, the multinationals will not be left alone to carry out this responsibility. But, of course, they have a major role to play because they are already there. They have the genetics and they know the road better. It is easier for us to stand on their shoulders and so we can see further than reinventing the wheel.
Are there lessons that we could learn from other African countries that seem to be doing better? Because I understand that, like Kenya shares and Ethiopia share some similarity with Nigeria, and they have, in the case of Ethiopia, they have more cows than Nigeria have. In the case of Kenya, they produce more milk than Nigeria does.
Thank you so much. If you look at basically for the dairy sector in Africa, there are two models we normally look at. We look at the South African model for large producers, for large producers, and we also look at the Kenyan model for small household producers. If you look at the South African model, it is a well-structured model that is very useful and applicable to large dairy producers, such as the Friesland Campina, the Ayoola, the Promacido, and so on, because of the nature of data that is collected. But of course, Nigeria can actually take a cue from Kenya. If you look at the Kenyan model, it has so much leverage on empowering women, especially. The same way our mothers here own chickens, 1, 2 chickens, 3 chickens, that is the same way women in Kenya own cattle. And that's why they've been able to attain self-sufficiency. Of course, Ethiopia and Kenya are the only 2 African countries that have attained self-sufficiency in dairy and dairy production, which simply means that production actually equals demand. Even though South Africa has more or produces more milk than these two countries, they have not attained self-sufficiency. So we can actually take a cue from the South African model and then see how they have gone about it, mimic it, and then I'm sure in no distant time we will be there.
I think at this point we'll go on a short break and resume the conversation when we return. Viewers, it is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. As you can see, our guest today is a specialist in a particular area, the genes of cows and how to improve the milk production in the country. Dr. Shoyombo Ayoola. Welcome back. It is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. Our guest today is Dr. Shoyombo Ayoola, a geneticist from one of the Nigerian universities who specializes on cows and how to improve them. Doctor, before we went on the break, you are talking about the seeming advantage that some other African countries like South Africa, like Kenya and Ethiopia have. While Kenya and Ethiopia have achieved self-sufficiency, South Africa is still in the league of Nigeria, is still yet, maybe because they consume a lot of milk and dairy products there. But why, how is it that Chad, that many people assume to be a desert-like country, having more cows than Nigeria, which is far bigger and more, I mean better suited for cow development?
Yes, thank you so much. If you look at Chad, for example, of course, cattle and cattle production seems to be a major enterprise, seems to be a major profession. That is what they focus. Again, like I said, they have been able to master or perfect their system of production such that the animals have actually acclimatized fully, and then they have been able to concentrate all their efforts into cattle production. So it is not actually about size. It is more of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
When you are talking of how to improve the Nigerian cows, you said that our breed can be improved to produce more milk. What happened to the beef aspect of the cow business? Because Nigerians consume a lot of beef as well. So won't it affect that aspect of the business?
Yes, if you look again at what I said earlier, looking at the comparison of Australia, for example, to Nigeria, you may be wondering, why am I comparing Nigeria with Australia? Well, I want to compare Nigeria with Australia because I am more familiar with Australian terrain. I've been there several times, and I've been able to interact with the key players of the Australian cattle industry. The 18 million heads of dairy cattle in Australia is not the total number of cattle they have. That is just the dairy.
Right.
So
apart
if you look at apart from beef,
right.
And of course, if you look at Victoria, for example, which is southern Australia, is the dairy capital of Australia, where the Rockhampton is the beef capital. So if you talk about cattle, you are not talking about just that 18 million heads of cattle. That's just for dairy. So for Nigeria, majority of our cattle breeds are beef breeds. Talk about the white Fulani, talk about the Sokoto Gudali, and so on and so forth.
What about the brown ones, especially the ones that we see from Maiduguri? But
yes, that's the red
probably
Bororo.
are coming from
the Chad
and all of those
from
areas.
Chad, from Niger Republic, and so on. That's the red Bororo. Are we together?
Yes.
They are majorly beef breeds. And so if we are going to talk about our dairy sector in Nigeria, it's a new ball game entirely. One of the things we need to do to actually set up and set the ball rolling for our dairy industry is to set up data banks such that data is collected from every
every
player.
ruga, every player, every commercial
And like I said,
farm, and all
about
that.
90 to 95% of the cattle in Nigeria is actually in the hands of the pastoralists, which does not even do not believe in data collection. So there is a lot to be done to persuade them to be able to release this data for national development.
And you are talking about data like maybe how many liters of milk
Liters
have
of
you
milk,
been
the
able,
health status,
at what age do they
the
start
age,
calving,
the
and all of that.
survivability of the calves,
Right.
the health status of the calf, the number of calves, how long have they kept this animal, what is their management system, and so on and so forth. A lot of data. So we need to begin to orientate and reorientate them to understand the need for data, and then begin to gather this data, make this data available for every other stakeholder so that they can begin to compare their own production pattern and the data they are getting with the national data, and then begin to know where they need to make adjustments and then know where they need to go next.
What about the problem of the cold chain system? Because even the little milk that we produce, a lot of it gets spoiled before it is used, because we do not have a cold management system whereby as soon as you take the milk out of the cow, you put it in cold storage until it gets to where it is going to be used for production, whether of cheese, of butter.
Yes,
or milk.
I know definitely that the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has done a lot of things in that regard. We have milk collection centers whereby, but again, I don't really know.
I think it's just sporadic. There are just too few.
Yes, I think again there needs to be more of these centers whereby when milk is collected, they can be chilled, they can be well preserved before they are moved to wherever. This is one of the things at the local government level, at the state level, at the federal level. There should still be more of investment in some of these facilities so that when these products are eventually gotten, we don't waste them when it comes to preservation.
Given the reality of Nigeria, as you say, big chunk of it is still pastoralist. Which way do we go? Is it a mix of the pastoralist and the commercial farming, the burgeoning commercial farming, or is it just the pastoralist that needs to be strengthened to be able to produce? But of course, you should be mindful of the public perception now of pastoralism as something that should be out of the way in Nigeria.
Well, like I earlier said, for us in Nigeria, a good number of the cattle we have is in the hands of the pastoralists. And there is no way you can take the cattle away from them all of a sudden like that. It has to be a gradual. What we need to do is to see how much we can also educate and then upgrade these pastoralists to giving us what we want. Upgrade them, let them begin to see the difference between their own indigenous cattle and the exotic or the crossbreds. If, for example, they have this cattle and it gives them 1 liter or 2 liters of milk per day, and they see another cattle from the next door neighbor, another pastoralist, and it's giving 10 liters per day, I'm sure there is no way this Mr. A would definitely want to see how Mr. B is doing it. And so begin to imbibe the same culture of Mr. B. So we cannot say we want to take away the cattle business from the pastoralists, but of course we can educate them, we can tutor them, we can show them, we can help them, we can upgrade them to begin to behave the way that is accepted everywhere, anywhere in the world.
But given the way the atmosphere is poisoned, I mean, you know, there are people who are, I mean, there are states in Nigeria that have declared open grazing illegal and all what. How do you manage the transition and still keep this pastoralists doing their business?
For me, to be very candid, there is nowhere in the world where open grazing has actually produced anything meaningful, especially cattle and dairy production. Everywhere we have had results, they are usually intensively managed.
By pastoralists?
Not by pastoralists, but by people in the cattle sector.
Okay, why I'm raising this is because you've said predominantly is the pastoralists and we should manage them, transit.
Yes, what I'm saying is that in our own case here is peculiar to Nigeria. We say majority of our cattle is in the hands of the pastoralists. And therefore, what we need to begin to do now is to see how we can educate and sensitize the pastoralists that the system of management they have been into is not the best way.
Yeah.
And there are better ways to do things. Because even every time an animal grazes, no matter what the animal eats on the way of grazing, by the time he's returning, because of the long distance, he's returning to a negative balance. And that is why you find that our beef here is usually tough. The moment you stress an animal beyond a particular limit, the animal will begin to release adrenaline. Adrenaline is an hormone that is responsible for toughening of the muscle. So you hardly go to any Nigerian restaurant or buy any beef in Nigeria that is normal, that is soft. It is because of our system of management. So we must begin to educate again. A lot of extension work must be done to educate the pastoralists that there are better ways of doing this same business and getting better results. I am sure if we go that route and they see for themselves, they will have another look towards what is happening at the moment.
I know you did attempt at the beginning, but can you just briefly, because we are running out of time, tell why is milk important? Because some will say, why is all this big deal about milk, about dairy and all of this?
Well, thank you so much. Milk basically is seen as a complete meal, containing so many nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and at every point in time, especially for young and developing children, there is need for milk. Like I said, it's a complete meal. It is expected that every human takes milk at least once a day. It helps in normal growth, helps in brain formation, helps in every aspect of development. And that is why the need for milk cannot be overemphasized.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Viewers, we have come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep at it with us.